Thank you very much, Madam Clerk, Madam Deputy Clerk. Welcome, members of council, members of the public, members of our staff for joining us here on Monday, November the 4th, 2024. This is of course, a regular council meeting, and we have a very good agenda here tonight. We've got several deputations that are going to be appearing in front of us as well, so we'd like to get to it. I will start with the land acknowledgement. I'd like to begin our meetings by recognizing the First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples of Canada as traditional stewards and caretakers of the land. We acknowledge that Clearview Township is located within the boundaries of Treaty 18, the traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, the Tiahuanaco, the Wendat, and is the home to many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people, and part of an intricate nationhood that reaches across Turtle Island. At this time of truth and reconciliation, we welcome the opportunity to work together towards new understandings and new relationships, and ask the Creator for guidance in all that we do. As always, it's my honor and privilege to say the land acknowledgement on behalf of our community, and I say it voluntarily. Something else I would like to say just before we begin our meeting. In 1 week's time, this community and all other communities across Canada will be honoring and celebrating and recognizing the great sacrifices that happened across our country in a time of war. Remembrance Day is a very important day that is 1 week from today. Council, we will not be meeting on that day. So if you would like to join me, I'd like to ask us all to rise for a moment of silence and recognize the families and those who gave the ultimate sacrifice for our country. Thank you so much. All right, Council, as I said, we will not be together next Monday, but I do know that our community has wonderful cenotaphs, and there will be a great gathering across our community. So we hope to see you all there. Council, we're going to move on to our agenda. Our agenda did not have a closed session today. For the first time in a long time, as our council did not meet in closed session. We appreciate that. And so we're going to move right to item number 2, our approval of the agenda. Recommendation be it resolved that Council of the Township of Clearview hereby approve the agenda dated November the 4th, 2024. Mr. MacArthur, Mr. Broderick, thank you so much. Is there any questions or amendments to the agenda? Seeing none, I'll call the motion. All in favor? Carries unanimous. Thank you. Declarations of pecuniary interest. Anybody have any declarations? Anything come up during the meeting, please bring it forward. We'll deal with it right away. Hey, Council, we're going to move to item number 4, which is our public participation period. We have members of the public here, so perhaps we'll have some public participation. Please be advised that comments and views expressed under public participation period are not the views of the Township of Clearview, Council, or the administration. Public participation is limited to 15 minutes. Each person is limited to 5 minutes. Questions or comments are to be directed to the mayor, and questions shall not refer to personnel matters, litigation, or potential litigation, or planning matters that have already had a public meeting, or any item considered confidential. And remember, please, at all times, share your time with your fellow citizens. Now, before I look to the public, I'll look to our Deputy Clerk. Madam Deputy Clerk, were there any electronic participations this week?
Thank you, Your Worship. No, there were not any.
Okay, thank you very much. Members of the public, if anybody would like to come forward and speak at our public participation period. Going once. Going twice. No? Yeah. Okay, we'll see you guys in deputations, but I give the opportunity if there's members of the public who are the second row. Thank you very much. Okay, so there are no public participations, but thank you so much. Again, just to remind the public, if you wish to communicate with members of council, you can always send an email. council@clearview.ca is the best way to reach all members of council at the same time. Okay, we're going to go to our delegations at this time. So we're going to move to item number 5.1. Ken Sherrod is here. Hello, Ken. Nice to see you. We have a water and sewer rates financial plan. Ken's going to do a presentation. And before he speaks, thanks for coming to the microphone though. I'd like to look over to Dan. I see Dan, you've got many of your crew here with you from your staff. Do you have anything you want to start with to introduce Mr. Sherritt's work? Dan Pro.
Thank you, Your Worship. Certainly want to thank Ken for all his hard work. Very, very much appreciated. Lots of hard work by our very own Stephanie Shell. Put a lot of time and effort into this once again. This is my first opportunity to go through the financial plan as the director in my new role. So yeah, we've done a good job. Kelly and Todd as well have put a lot of effort, and hopefully we have some good news for council and our ratepayers.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And Ken, welcome to our council chambers again. I think we got the microphone working for you.
Okay, thank you very much, Your Worship.
Good to have you
Members
here,
of
sir.
Council, staff, and members of the public. It's a pleasure to be here this evening. It's a very warm and interesting evening for November. I'm here to present the draft rate development report and the financial plan. If I can have another slide, back in the early 2000s, there was a water episode in Walkerton that I'm sure you're all familiar with. And coming out of that, the Ministry of the Environment implemented a number of regulations to improve water management in the province and improve the safety of the drinking water. And one of the things that they implemented was a very elaborate licensing system. Clearview's license renewal is due in late 2024, early 2025. There are a number of elements to obtaining a license: a permit to take water, drinking water works permit, an operational plan, and accredited operating authority plan. And those will all be put together by staff and submitted to the appropriate authorities. But one additional item is a financial plan. That's a very critical new development that came out of the early 2000s, and it's totally changed the way we look at water planning, and particularly the rates. It's required a much longer time frame to look down the road to see what's coming and try and anticipate that and have money ready when work needs to be done to renew the systems. So that was a revolutionary step, and many jurisdictions outside Ontario still haven't reached this, but it's a very helpful approach. If I have the next slide, please. The key part of a financial plan is the rate study. It's the foundation that the whole plan sits on. So that's what I'm going to talk about first. So if I can have the next slide, it just shows the principal elements in a rate study. And the rate study basically tries to consider all of the things that go into running a water system and totaling up all the costs and then projecting them forward, in this case for 10 years at least, but generally much longer. So the first thing is to look at the operating costs. These unfortunately have started to inflate over the last 3 or 4 years, like everything else, like groceries and all the other things. So that's been going on, and they're just starting to go down a bit. Secondly, take a look at capital, of course, and capital is the big driver of rates. So there are 2 reasons or 2 types of capital. One is for new growth, and most of the cost is covered off by development charges for that. But sometimes there are other charges that come back to the existing users that have to be dealt with. And secondly, there is the renewal of older infrastructure, and you do have some really old infrastructure that has to be renewed periodically. So that's an important part of the capital part. And then the other areas that I look at are the number of users Generally, in a system where the users are increasing, it helps offset some of the rates, other things being equal. And also look at how much water is used. And water use does vary quite a bit from year to year for a variety of reasons. If you have large industrial users, and you do have one, their use fluctuates depending on what they're producing. So if they have a really big year, they use more water, and otherwise it may be less. And likewise, homeowners, water use fluctuates because on a really dry year, more water gets used outside to water the lawns and gardens. Unfortunately, last year was a perfect storm of declining water use. The industrial use went down and residential use went down. So what I do then is take those three elements, put them all together, take a look forward, and come up with a rate that balances them so that at the end of the day, all the costs are balanced by revenues coming in from various sources. Most often user fees, water rates. If I have the next slide, thank you. For the capital forecast, it looked out to the year 2024. Basically had a plan to replace all the assets, all the existing and new assets that you're going to add in the next 10 years by 2024 with 3% inflation. Let's hope it stays there at 3%. The operating costs, they were inflated anywhere between 3 and almost 5%. The latter part was arrived at by looking at the construction price index, which is still much higher than the consumer price index. So a lot of the things on that list, like even insurance and a lot of the services and small repairs are more like 5% inflation at, according to the construction price index. So I totaled them up, and it probably averaged out about 3.7% over all the different expenses. So that 3.7% is baked into the rates going forward. The rates cannot go below that unless you get a sudden increase in number of users or a lot of water use. So that's a critical consideration. I looked at future water sales by considering the number of new users that you're planning to add to the system under your growth assumptions. Took a look at the number of users, of course, and considered the development charges, local improvement charges, developer payments, and loans and other sources of revenue, and put together a financial plan. I have the next slide. What you have here is a long-range projection of the cost of renewing water assets between now and 100 years from now in inflated terms. So you can see there's quite large costs in the near term. Then in the middle term, there's quite large ones. And then near the end, you're replacing all the stuff that you just put in the last few years. Of course, by then the cost will be much higher. So that's just to give you some idea of what lies down the road. But with the long-range planning that we do, that is considered and covered. If I can have the next slide, this takes a shorter look. It looks out only to 2050. And it shows you the split between growth-oriented development, and the dark bars below are what the user has to pay. The user being the folks sitting around the table here. That's what you'll pay in your water bills. The really tall, thin ones will be paid by developers or local improvement charges, and they're self-financing largely. But you can see there are some fairly large ones in the near term that have to be paid by users. Then there's a little hiatus, and then it builds up in the middle term there. The growth projection only goes out 10 years. You had the development charges review study here a few months ago. And that really looked out about 10 years. And that study will be repeated again down the road. And that'll push the growth related developments further out. So it's not as if the growth all stops the way the chart shows. That's just as far as we've looked out for growth. Number of users, if I can have the next slide, please. Now, this is a really critical chart because it's showing you the assumptions that are made about future growth in number of users. And this really drives your revenues and drives your water use. And we're assuming here that you're going to get 150 new connections or new users per year for the next 10 years. That represents about 4.8%, 5% for nice round numbers of your revenues. So it's really important to watch this carefully as we go forward, because each year you don't get 150, you'll lose 5% of your revenue that was baked into the financial plan. So you'd be coming up short. So that's a key foundation. Just keep that in mind as we go forward. Now, here we have on the next slide, the water that's going to be sold. As you can see, it took a bit of a dip. I mentioned that earlier this year in 2023. And that's the projection going forward if those numbers, 150 new users per year, are connected. And if the large industry that you have continues in operation more or less the way they have for the last number of years. And if your commercial users hang in there, and they seem to be doing quite well. So that's the future water sold. Now, based on that, here is the proposed rate going forward. It stretches out for 10 years just to make sure that we don't fall off a cliff at some point along the way. So it's a safety measure. But this rate really will only be valid for at most 5 years, because inevitably things change, as we've discovered to our discomfort over the last 5 years. Almost none of our projections worked out very well because we didn't get the users. In 2019, when I was here, we were looking at inflation around 2%. Now it's more than double that. So things have changed. They haven't been normal. And I don't think we're in normal yet. And depending on what happens tomorrow in the neighboring country next door, who knows what lies down the road. Bond prices have already shot up in the last 3 weeks because the bond market is expecting one of the candidates who's very pro-business to win. So sadly, that may affect future mortgage rates, which may affect your future number of users. So anyway, this is the proposed rate. I'll show you on the next slide what it means for water bills. And it just gives you a few clues here as to what it might mean. Normally, the water bills for water will rise between 4 and 5% per year. And that includes the 3.7% for inflation. So we're slightly above inflation. If you look across North America, water and sewer costs all across North America are rising faster than inflation, because everywhere efforts are being made to make water cleaner and safer, and to clean up the wastewater to protect the environment more rigorously. So that's unfortunately a North American phenomenon if you're a water bill payer. But when I get to the end, I'll show you what you're actually paying for water, and hopefully you may feel a bit better when you see that chart. I don't know. That's the water bill. Here's a comparison with some neighboring municipalities. So you're just in the middle there, which is probably a good place to be. You're not a municipality on a big water body. So that means your rates tend to be slightly higher. And secondly, you have 6 subsystems. And that's why I put forth the lakes in there. They have 30 small systems. And when you have small systems, the costs seem to be higher, just fact of life. So that gives you some idea of how things stack up. I think you were about that same position the last time I was here. No, the financial plan regulations. So that's the water rate. Now I'm going to talk a bit about the water financial plan, and then I'm going to come back and talk about wastewater rates. But I'll talk about the financial plan now because you're only required to put a water financial plan together. So the first thing is you need the financial plan before licensing, as I mentioned. It covers a 6-year period. The plan that I have here goes from 2024 to 2030, so we exceed that slightly. Compulsory for water systems, has a number of mandatory components, has to be 6 years in length, has to be available to the public free of charge, placed on the internet ideally. Bit of an eye test here tonight on these slides. If I'd known this, I'd have made them bigger. Well, that may not work. I once had to do that with a deputy minister. It didn't work very well. You have to advertise the report availability. It has to be approved by council formally in a formal motion. And a copy then has to go to the Ontario government where they keep track of these things. Now, been doing these things for a long time. I've never had an inquiry, but who knows? As far as I know, none of my clients have ever had an inquiry. And you have to repeat the study all over again within the next 5 years. Following the creation of the financial plan regulations, there were a couple of further add-ons in the years later. The next one was source protection, to make sure that if you have a well-based system, that there's an area around it that's protected. And the municipality's done some work in the past on that, and are basically saying that any future work will be funded by developers. And there is also concern with lead services. Big panic in the US right now on lead service. They've had lots of trouble, but the municipality apparently has no lead, so it's not an issue. Now, to look at financial planning, just a note here about amortization. It's an accounting concept, but the idea is that when you install an asset, like a water pipe in the ground, it has a life. It's given a life actuarially, maybe 100 years. It's also an engineering estimate of how long they'll last. And then once they're in the ground, they immediately start to deteriorate. It's like driving a new car off the lot. They suddenly lose value. Well, pipes lose value the minute you install them. And that loss of value is called amortization. And the way you determine amortization, you divide the cost of the item by its life. So if you bought an item for $1,000 and has a 10-year life, it's $1,000 a year that's going to come off. So at the end of 10 years, it goes to zero. You don't have any value. So just keep that in mind as we look, because there are a couple of charts I'm going to present that show you the value of your assets after they've been fully depreciated, or after they've been depreciated. What's left after you subtract the amortization is book value. So after 5 years with that investment I mentioned, a $10,000 investment after 5 years, it would have lost $5,000. Its net asset value then would have been $5,000. That's what's left. The net book value is zero in the final year of life. And what we do is project net book value now and project it out into the future just to see if your system is getting older or newer. Just like people. Of course, the engineers run the world. The accountants sort of keep track of the numbers, but the engineers run the world. So some assets, in fact, are going to live longer than the original estimate. I think you have some pipes here that are living longer than expected, but they were assessed by a lab and determined that they would in fact live longer. So the actual decision about when their value has expired is done by engineers. But the accountants will warn them that it may be coming. And sometimes it happens soon. So the first chart I'm showing here is the net financial assets after you subtract the debt. And what I'm showing you, what I call the user pay part here, because there are a couple of different types of debt. You've got debt which water bill users pay. And then you've got debt that basically developers and people on local improvement projects, they're paying for those. But what I'm showing you here in this chart is only the debt for the user pay. So you can see it's in surplus now, goes into a little deficit, and then it pops back up again. So it's come back up. That's good news. The next chart, please. Yeah, shows all the debt. So this includes the user pay debt plus what's on development charges shown on the books and passing through the water system and the local improvement charges. And you can see there's a buildup of debt here in the next 3 or 4 years. And then it starts to diminish. So those are the normal cycles you see as you're going through a water system. And all water systems and so on go through this, which makes their comparison on that table I showed you earlier rather awkward, because if you're one of the ones that have just gone through a whole lot of investment, then your rates don't look as good as somebody who's been sitting on an investment they made 20 years ago. So that's one of the little joys of trying to compare people. The next item is the tangible capital assets. The original cost less the amortization. This is book value. So what you're showing here is your book value at the moment is about 50 million. And that's going to rise to 80 million if all the projects that are currently in the growth side of things go ahead and the renewal projects. So that's a good picture. You're adding to your assets. Of course, that means you have to keep adding to them. The next time you project out another 10 years, you got to keep them up. The next chart is water accumulated surplus cash plus asset value less all debt. And that's both kinds, user pay, developers, local improvement debt. And that's positive. Trending upwards. The next one is revenues less expenses, including amortization. Now, amortization is the annual amount that all of your assets are declining each year. So obviously you want this one, you want to have your revenues more than that, otherwise you're losing ground. So we're on the positive side here. So that's good news. And then lastly, this is the cash equivalents at the end of the year. This is what's in your reserve fund. And this is strictly on the user pay side. So we're drawing down the assets and then they start to rebuild because there are some investments coming. Okay, that's the water. So that covers off the water part of the water rate and the water financial plan. Now I'm going to go to wastewater. And I did the wastewater the same way as I did the water. So the first slide is capital. Again, you can see a bunch of capital right away in the next few years. And then again, quite a bit of investment in the middle years. And then of course, you're starting to replace big items near the end, water plants, treatment plants rather in this case, and pipes. This next chart shows which is user pay, which are the solid ones that you pay out of your water rates, And then the tall, thin ones are what developer charges or local improvement charges will cover. So you can see there's a couple of decent sized projects right away here that have to be covered off by user fees. And then there's another big one in 2029. And then it tapers off. If I have the next slide. Now, what we do to recover the wastewater fees are put a surcharge on the water bill. So these are the projections going forward. 2024, 86%. These percentages really don't mean anything, strictly speaking, except when they go up, it means they're going up faster than the water rate. Okay. The wastewater bills are on the next slide. It gives you some idea. And what I have been proposed here is that we've fallen behind on the wastewater side because in 2019, we overestimated the amount of growth. Growth didn't happen because of the pandemic and all the craziness that's happened since in inflation and contractors having a big problem trying to figure out how to make money. So we didn't get the numbers, so now we've got to increase the wastewater rates. The wastewater rates ended up being too low. So this represents about a 10% increase a year for the next 5 years. Now, if I can turn to the next slide, it'll give you some idea of where you are now. Right now, you're the cheapest. You have the cheapest wastewater rates in this list. And that really shouldn't be happening, but it's happening because we underestimated the rate based on the growth that we actually did get. The pandemic derailed us. So we need to put Clearview further down the list here to make any sense. Because many of these other communities are on big bodies of water. So it's much easier to deal with waste when you sit on a big body of water than when you're inland. So generally, the most expensive communities are inland. So you're right at the bottom of the list here at the moment in 2024. I put the 2025 list price in there with a 10% increase. So you see it starts to push it down. And just offhand, the 2026 would put you just below Kawartha Lakes. But of course, this is a somewhat funny list because they're all going to be moving the same way you are, right? Inflation's hitting them too. So they will all become more expensive. But we've got behind here on the wastewater. So that's why the rate's a bit higher. It was just a bit too low for the last few years because of the pandemic. So, and the last slide I have is drinking water, its value in 2024 and what will happen by 2029. So if you drink a glass of water for $1, you can get at the moment 785 glasses. That drops to 672 in 2029. If you take a 500 ml bottle, which I had when I came in, standard bottled water size, you can get 534 of those for $1 in Clearview in 2024. If you go to Tim Hortons, you can get slightly less than half a bottle for $1. So I think that provides some indication of the value that you're providing here. And then there are a few other numbers here. Toilet flushing, if you have a really old toilet, you can get 18 flushes for $1. If you have a brand new toilet, super toilet, they're sold everywhere, you get 59 flushes for $1. So, and a few other numbers here, clothes washing. Again, if you have a new front load, you can get 3 washes for $1. Now, if you include wastewater, you get about half of each of those. But it's still a terrific value, I think. So that's my presentation. Thank you very much. Thanks to the staff for their assistance. It's been invaluable.
Well, Ken, thank you for your presentation and your work on this. I know you've been doing this for a few years and you've been able to bring the experience that you have working with other municipalities and seeing how they work. I'm interested, if I can, just ask a couple of quick questions, just to clarify. I think earlier you said approximately 3.7% will be the annual increase. I think then you said it later at 3%. So did you mean it would be 3.7% annually for water? Or did you mean 3% annually?
No, it's about, it works out to, for the operating cost, it's
Yeah.
about 3.7 roughly.
Oh, it is about 3.7.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what the inflation is right about now. If you average all the items, you know, labor,
Yeah.
all of these funny items that, small repairs, equipment,
All
it
right.
averaged out about 3.7.
Okay. All right. And just one other quick clarification before we go to other questions. You mentioned 150 units per year is the calculation you're going to reactivate even after we sort of had that negative year because of COVID.
Yeah.
Although we did have a pretty good year in the building department that during the COVID years. I think because there was a lot of projects that were underway. Connections, 150 units, you're looking every year for
10 years.
For at least 10 years.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
1,500 connections are built into these rates. So if we don't get to 1,500, we'll have underestimated our revenue.
Okay.
So
All right.
it's really important to watch that. And that's really the problem we've had over the last 5 years. Because of COVID, all that development dropped off, right?
Right.
So we've undershot from where I thought we would be.
Okay. I'll have some other questions, but if you don't mind, I'd like to turn to Dan. Do you have anything you want to conclude with before I go to other questions from members? You're good?
No, yeah, your worship, I'm good.
All right.
Staff are here to answer questions from council as well. If you wish.
Very good. Thank you. Members of council, do you have any questions to Mr. Sherritt? And I see the deputy mayor's up. Mr. Beelan, thank you. Go ahead, please.
I'll throw, listening to the costing for the amortization, I should say. Are we building our reserves accordingly so that if we, I won't say 100 years from now, we have to replace everything, but are we building reserves to accommodate recommendations in this financial plan? I'll throw that at our staff and I'll hear what's said
Dan,
about
Todd,
Todd, he would.
Steph, I'm not sure if you're part of that calculation, but how about Dan? Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, worship, through the deputy mayor. That's exactly what the financial plan does in the rate study, right? Is to ensure that there is money there in 100 years and 50 years to replace something that was put in the ground 50 years ago. So that's the purpose of all the rates and the financial plan, to look ahead for when something goes in the ground that lasts for 50, 75, 100 years, that there's enough money there at the end to replace that piece of pipe or that valve or that.
So we follow the guidelines that have been recommended here already. So we have the reserves if need be to replace. Can we use it also for repair if we get emergencies? That money?
Through your worship, that too is built in on the operating side. So any repairs, it goes to, a portion of that goes to the rate as well. It comes out of the rates.
Good, thank you.
Yeah,
Water pays for water and wastewater operations, capital. The rates pay for all those things.
Okay. Mr. Beelan is next, and then look for other members.
Thank you, your worship.
Go ahead.
I heard somewhere that this license is good for 5 years, yet we're doing the financial plan every 6 years. Is it 5 years that a license is good for?
Yes, 5 years.
Okay, and my second question is, you're using 3 or 3.5% for inflation,
Yeah.
yet the fixed portion increase is actually 5% or a little above it. Why 5%? Where does that number come from, and why are we using 5%? It's on slide 10, the fixed portion increase.
Sorry, do we have that slide, Andy?
Could we get that? Yeah. Sasha's gonna try to dig it out here.
Sorry, is that the methodology one? I'm first. Is that the slide there that you're referring to?
No, there's on slide 10 is a chart, the fixed portion increase of a user pay. For 2024 to 2025 goes from $177 to $186,
Oh, I see.
which is
Okay.
actually just over 5% or at 5%, I think.
Yeah,
So
well,
why are we
it's
using
about
5%?
4 to 5%, and it depends which user group you're in, but that's the rate increase. That's what the people would pay in their water bill. So it's higher than the inflation because there are other things than operating costs. We have to cover off future capital, as was mentioned.
Okay, so that's how we determined 5%? I was just
Yeah,
wondering
yeah,
where the
that's right.
5% came from.
That's right. I looked at the 3.8 for an operating cost.
Okay,
And then I looked at all the new stuff that has to be paid for.
okay,
And renewal stuff that has to be paid. And that's all factored in there. So that's why it gets up to 5.
okay.
And normally the capital will push it up even higher, but you have a lot of growth here, so that tends to keep the lid on it.
Okay, thank you, Ken.
All right, thank you, Councillor Beelan. Other members? Other members? Once, twice? Okay, I'll go back to a question that, did you have something? Please pop on your microphone and jump right in and ask that question.
Thank you. Through your worship to Ken, we have 6 subsystems. Is that what you mentioned?
Yes, that's
And-
right, you
and
do.
A place like Collingwood would have like 30 subsystems? Is that,
Kawartha Lakes had about 29 the time I worked on theirs.
okay, so
So it tends to make them more expensive was the point I was trying to make.
yes, that's just what I was getting at. That
Yeah.
So theirs is more expensive because they've got more subsystems.
Yeah, and I did their rates, the year the financial plan started, and the MOE got really heavy handed there and said that a lot of the systems had to be significantly upgraded. So they had a big capital cost that was laid on them. They've been building up for quite a few years. And that all had to be paid in the rates as well. So that really pushed them up. And those rates are still high because those loans that were taken out are still there.
Okay.
So they have big capital.
All right, thank you very much. And I would like to ask the clerk if she could locate that chart for me, which was in the presentation. So I had a question, if you can, if there's nothing else from other members, looking around the room first. Okay, one of the charts you indicated here said water bills of communities in Simcoe County or have small systems 2024. On your book here, it's let's see, that's the one. So I just want to ask the overall users, the number of actual users connections to these individual community systems
Yeah,
is significantly higher number of users
yeah,
in the top 4
yes,
versus the bottom 5. Would you agree?
yeah,
So obviously Collingwood, Barrie, Penetang Machine, and perhaps even part of Springwater Residential, because it's very close to the city of Barrie. There's a lot of users there.
yeah,
Whereas Clearview, Springwater Commercial, Kawartha, and Toss are certainly smaller in population. It's a smaller number of subscribed users.
yeah.
Okay. So this is where the economy of scale comes into play.
Yeah.
And so can you explain to me how, as we grow, which we're growing, we're getting more and more connections. Is this, have you taken into account how our community grows and where we would sit compared to our neighbors? Or are we destined to always be in that middle group rather than in the lower group, which is much more expensive, or in the higher group, which is much less expensive? Are we destined to always be there simply because of our number of users, potential users that will use our water system?
I would think you're probably gonna move up slightly. If you added the 1,500 users,
Yes.
if you do. Now, pentanguishing is an interesting one, but again, they're sitting on big bodies of water, so.
Mhm.
You know, you're inland here, that presents problems,
Yeah.
either with wells or pipelines.
Yeah.
And that adds to your water costs, so.
Yeah, I would add though that,
You know, the problem is it's almost impossible to compare communities, to be quite
I
truthful.
appreciate that completely.
Realistically, I mean, you could have
Yeah,
the best place to sort it out is in the parking lot.
right. Well, I hope we don't have to get to that, Ken, but the point I wanted to make about two things about this. First of all, using Penetanguishene as a comparator in here is a valid point because they have a specific industry there that uses a whole lot of water.
Yeah,
And they're human users of water because they have the prisons there, they have the hospitals there, et cetera.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
they're are using a great deal of water, and their water unit count is a little different. Because if you were to calculate what, that'd be an interesting question for the engineering sometime to determine the water rates or the water units for an incarceration facility versus a school or something like that.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
their rates would be, their unit number count would be different. So
Yeah.
it's interesting that they're in there, but I do know the folks in Penetanguishene do use a lot of water, like they do. And they have that great Georgian Bay that's right accessible to them that they
Yeah.
can draw water upon. So I'm not trying to dispute it. I just want to point out that it's
Yeah.
a little bit smaller of a community, but it's a massive amount of water gets used there.
Yeah.
Fair enough?
Yeah.
Okay.
You fortunately, if I may just say.
Sure, yeah.
You also have one large water user here as well.
We have a food
That's
producer.
Big
Yes.
help.
Yeah, a food producer in Reinhardt's, which
Yeah,
is a major employer in our community and services, the needs of Canada when it comes to vinegar. Like
That's
they
right.
are the vinegar producer in Canada. And so we really want to be supportive to keep that
Yeah.
operational for the economy of the country as well as for our local economy and
Yeah.
jobs. So
so,
there's no doubt that it's beneficial to keep that place operational. The thing I wanted to point out is when you see the chart like this, I would hope that residents and water users that are in our communities of, Stayner, Creemore, Nottawa, Lowell, that are using water services, that they do get value for their money
mhm.
in the water that they use. And, the smaller number of users lends us to the side that we're going to be paying a little bit more. So when I hear residents say, but they pay less in Wasaga Beach and they pay less in Collingwood, and I'm saying, sure, but they have a lot larger community than what we are and a lot more people using the system. So the balance needs to be understood by the public. We're a small community and this is the unfortunate reality. These things cost.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and if I could just add, the other thing to consider is if one of those communities recently got a large government grant for a water capital project, then their rates would be lower on that account.
Correct.
So there are so many variables, so it
Yeah.
makes it extremely hard.
So it would be on the capital side though, because it's capital grant. So the
Yeah.
capital, yeah,
Yeah. that's
the
right.
actual price per cubic meter of water, Todd and Steph, I don't think that would generally change.
Well,
Am I wrong?
No, actually capital is a major driver of rates. So if you can get the capital down,
Yeah,
it really helps.
for sure. But I'd be interested to see where this lands because,
Yeah.
we're in the middle of a great application right now. I'm sure you're aware. So we're very hopeful.
Well, that's really be a good thing if you got it.
You bet. In so many ways.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. If members of council, if there's nothing further, Dan, Stephanie or Todd, you guys want to add anything to this?
Just, I was gonna bring that up to your worship that hopefully we're successful with the grant that we just submitted on Friday
Yes.
and we may need to revisit this in short order based on the success or
Correct.
successful application. So.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Ken, and thank
Okay.
you to the team over here that helped produce this. Stephanie, it's always great to have you in our chambers, as I always say, anytime you're here. So thanks for joining us here. Nice to see you. All right, thanks very
Thank you
much. Mayor.
much.
So on our agenda, we have item number 5.2. We have another delegation. We have the Southern Georgian Bay Regional Green Economy Hub Pilot. And Catherine Daw is here. Hi, Catherine. And so is Jim Campbell, one of our trusty volunteers from our community.
Thank you
Before
very
you speak,
much.
yeah, nice to see you. I just want to mention, Jim, you and the team at Duntroon did a great job with the volunteers for the Small Hall Festival this year. It was fantastic.
Thank you.
Yeah, lots of great comments that came to me about the Small Hall Festival and all of it sort of centered around the Duntroon multitude of events, between the concert and the chickens. It was great. So good job, volunteers.
Thank you.
Sue, nice to see you.
Thank you. Your worship, Mayor Measures, Deputy Mayor Van Severin, councillors, staff members, and the public. Thank you for the opportunity to present this deputation to you this evening. If you would just go to the next slide, please. So Jim and I are going to actually share in the presentation process because we are partners in this project. And what I really want to do is spend a bit of time just giving you some background on the hub pilot. And then Jim will talk to how it will support business, community, and residents in Clearview in particular. And then the ask that we're going to make of the municipality. Next slide. So just to position this and how important this project is that from a climate change perspective, we always ask ourselves, well, who's actually responsible for why we are where we are right now with climate change? And what I'm proposing to you, or I suggest to you, is that it's all of us. It's government at the federal, provincial, and municipal level. It's citizens, people in the community, and it's also businesses, organizations, and technology. And I talk about technology because businesses are the ones that often are the innovators of technology. And we can see some of the innovation that we've already started to have happen because of climate change. Just think of electric vehicles, heat pumps, all sorts of other things that are intended to help us reduce our climate pollution. And for both of our organizations, we've probably spent more of our time very focused on government and people. And the third wheel, really the business piece, is a very important element. So that is why we're here to talk about this hub pilot. Next slide, please. So Green Economy Canada is an organization that's a national organization. They are a not-for-profit. They operate as a social enterprise, which means that they provide fees for service. In other words, they charge a membership fee on an annual basis, and they give a service back to the businesses that pay the membership fee on a regular basis. So they are the lead for this hub pilot. And the reason that they're leading it rather than it being locally led is that their premise is that they want to set up regional hubs across the country, and they want to make sure that they're going to be extremely successful. This is the first regional hub that they're undertaking that is for a smaller population than typically the size of the ones that they do. The most recent hub pilot that was most recent regional hub is in Peterborough, which is approximately about 100,000 people. If we were doing this for a larger geography here, then it would probably be no question asked. But what we've decided with them is that we would do a pilot where they would lead it and we would provide the local ground support in acquiring and letting businesses know that they could be part of this, participate in this pilot, and that we would run it for approximately a year and a half. So it's going to end at the end of December of 2025. There will be 2 cohorts, which will be made up of 10 businesses approximately each, so 20 businesses in total. This will also include not-for-profit organizations because they too run as a business. And then at the end of 2025, we'll take some time to review how successful the pilot project was and then determine what the model will be for going forward, and then whether we can carry it as it is or whether we'll be expanding it into a greater geography. And certainly Grey County is very interested, and we've had interest expressed to us from Simcoe North as well. So there is an opportunity to expand it, but when you're running a pilot, you try to keep it into a smaller geography so that you can actually do something and prove the concept. Next slide. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about funding and where we are with that. So really this project is a multi-sectoral partnership. It's made up of philanthropists and businesses and citizens and organizations that are really the ones that are going to benefit from it. And so the Institute of South Georgian Bay, with whom the Collingwood Climate Action Team and other action teams in the region have participated in running a whole series around sustainable futures, local sustainable economies. And it brought us to this point where we're running this actual pilot. And they have provided us with some core seed funding, as well as the South Georgian Bay Innovation Fund, led by Larry Hall, has provided funding for marketing and outreach. And we're actively seeking other funding to match that amount and more. And I will just let you know that Town of Blue Mountain has funded us for $5,000 for this current fiscal year till 2024, and another $5,000 in 2025. And this afternoon, the town of Collingwood has also funded us for $3,500 for the remainder of this year and $5,000 for next year. We are doing deputations to all of the municipalities in South Georgian Bay to seek their support and their funding, so that you are not the only ones that we're asking for money from. We are a charity, and we have an agenda, and we have a budget for spend on other projects that we're doing as well. This project needs its own funding. It's a substantial project in size. And we also, because we're getting so much support from Green Economy Canada, some of our fees will be going to them, or some of our expenses will be going to paying them and their staff for their help. Next slide. I just wanted to let you know a little bit about where we are with the project so far. So we built a project team, and we built a project plan, and we have a working team. We've created a business development, marketing, and communication strategy, and have undertaken that work. We've been launching our business development efforts through waves of emails and connections across the region, and have been building. So it says over 250 businesses. It's probably much more than that. I haven't looked at the latest numbers, but we're making personal connections with businesses. And that is why it is so important for us to have key stakeholders in each of the municipalities. And that's where Clearview Sustainability Network and some of the other climate action teams are supporting us and helping out, as well as chambers of commerce and economic development organizations and individuals. For example, your staff would be participating in that. So we've set up some initial calls. So the process is basically when they fill out an expression of interest, then they have a conversation with us, and then they'll have a conversation with Green Economy Canada. And then what happens is Green Economy Canada gives them a quote on how much it will cost them for their membership fee. It is scaled based on the size of the organization and the number of facilities they have. So everybody pays based on the size of the business. And right now, to date, we have 3 businesses that have signed up, and we have another 5 that are on the expression of interest and on the journey towards deciding whether they're going to participate in the pilot as well. We've done a media outreach. As I mentioned, we've been talking to chambers of commerce, and that's one of the reasons that we're here as well, and getting a lot of support from the other funders that we've had to date. We hosted an in-person event in Wasaga Beach in early October, and generated a large number of interest there, which is now starting to turn into signing up for either cohort 1 or cohort 2. And then the last piece is that we are creating an advisory committee. It's going to be launched sometime next week to support the work effort. And this will be including our key stakeholders. So all of the climate action teams in each of the different municipalities, funders, a business representation, and community representation. And that committee will meet on a bi-monthly basis just to review where we are and provide feedback on how we're doing and whether there's any other things we could do to improve our process or to increase our opportunities for success. So I'm just going to hand it over to Jim. And what he's going to do is he's maybe not going to speak exactly to these slides.
Yeah.
But you have them up there so you can read as much as he can, but I'm just going to let him take it from here. Thanks, Jim.
Yeah, thanks, Catherine. Mayor and council members. I'd like to say I'm here with 2 hats on. One is to show the support of Clearview Sustainability Network in this initiative. And the other is as the owner of a business that's been operating in Clearview for over 25 years now. And so it's kind of a twofold thing. And I'd just like to share some of that type of thing with you. So, how will it support our business kind of thing? And so even though our architectural design firm has taken a lot of initiatives already because of our personal interests, but also our clients. I think we've been pretty good at reading into the future a bit of what people are doing, like very early adopters of ground source heat pump, getting people into that. And now, it keeps changing. And so we're always watching what the most recent things are. And so, we have done things like change our HVAC system, modes of transportation, electrifying things. Lots of initiatives already that have actually increased the profitability of our company and drawn in clients and even contractors come and seek us out because they hear about the work that we're doing. But I think we are going to be signing up, or we have signed up for this initiative, because I think even though, I think I know some of this stuff, these people are experts and there's a lot to learn about different aspects of kind of, we have an interest in lowering our carbon footprint, but also of having that reputation, because it's from a business perspective, it's always done us very well. And so we're looking at both additional cost savings for our business, but also to boost our firm's reputation as being local leaders in sustainable building design. And yeah, we have clients are coming to us specifically for that reason. Hopefully also because they like our designs, but it's amazing now how that has shifted. And I wanted to show you, this is just Construct Canada, this kind of basic trade magazine, covers all kinds of construction. You open it up, first page, new sustainable solutions for your next project, CO2 0, fully offset in the entire life cycle. So it's from a tile company, and then you open up another one, sustainable paint index. Like it's not only the kind of green building magazines or anything, it's in like totally mainstream stuff. Everybody's looking in this. So obviously this company, Mapai, who's, big, makes grout and adhesives, are, they went through a process similar to what this program offers. And so at the end of it, again, from a business perspective, I think we have the potential to be in publications or to win awards or anything for our work, which then puts us on the map even more. Next slide, please. And the people in community, I have to say that, like, from a staff perspective, our staff kind of love what we're doing. They're right into it. Two of them are local, one's from away. We have co-op students seeking us out from all over Canada, some of them even from Creemore, and, coming to work because this is what that generation of people in university, a lot of them are interested in. So I think that's a draw to the community. And I think other businesses in Clearview could be the same, like there's a great interest of a younger generation to be aligned with businesses that I think are in their minds taking the right steps. I think that's it. Yeah, next slide, please. Oh, you go ahead.
So with regard to the municipality itself, we'd like you to consider that this is leading by example and that it's in line with your climate emergency declaration that you made in April of 2022. It's also, I think, essential for your businesses in your community to see that you care as much as they care and that they're concerned about the future. And so I think it will also attract new businesses. Jim's a good example of what's happened. You'll see people coming here because they can see that they want to live in this region. They come for the environment. They come for all the amenities that we have here as a region, but they also want to work in a business that's here, and they want to help them grow and exist. And their families are wanting that as well. So I think that there's a lot of increased employment opportunities. And that as a leader in sustainability this is the way we do things around here, that it would really benefit the municipality as a whole and its residents, and also to enhance your economic development opportunities, which is part of your mandate as the regional government. So last slide, please. Next slide. So the ask tonight of council is, first of all, to support this undertaking, recognizing its benefits and meeting the climate emergency declaration of April 2022. I know you have a climate advisory committee and that they're working on the things that you as a municipal government needs to do with regard to building out a corporate climate action plan and establishing a community climate action plan as well, because this is what is part of your role in helping us have a sustainable future. But that can't be done alone, and that is why these kinds of projects like this Green Economy Hub is so important, not just to us individually, but also to the community and the region at large. And the last part of the ask is for you to have a seat on the advisory committee as a funder. So we are actually asking you to help fund this project. And what I do want to say about that is that you know, you've heard me say what some of the other municipalities are doing, and we are going to be speaking to all of them. We've already done a deputation in Wasaga Beach, and we're doing one in Meaford and Grey Highlands. The funding that you provide for us will not be spent on the project at large. It will be used for funding activities within your municipality. It will mean, for example, hosting some business events, where we can have businesses come and hear about what this project's about, learn about it, ask questions, for us to be interacting with businesses locally here so that our working team can come here with the sustainability network and reach out to people like Reinhardt and the smaller and medium-sized businesses, because the Green Economy Canada model is to work with local and small to medium-sized businesses. It's not to go after the large corporations like the TD Banks and the Canadian Tires of the world, because they're already doing their sustainable work. They know what needs to be done. This is really focused on those smaller businesses, most of them many local, that have a need and want to be part of what's going on in the changes that we need for the future. So that's the end of our presentation. Happy to answer any questions you might have.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Catherine. It's great presentation. And Jim, always good presentation. Thank you so much. Before we begin with questions, I want to just make a real clarification. This council passed a resolution in April 2022. It was called a climate crisis.
Okay.
It's not a climate emergency.
Okay.
It's a climate crisis.
Okay.
Now, other communities have used the word emergency, but this council wisely recognized that it's not an emergency. It's a crisis. So I just want to make sure you understand that that was the attitude of this council at the time. All right, members of council, do you have any questions to our presenters? Yes, Mr. Van Stavern and Mr. Beelan. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you all. It's more a question to throw it through to Jim and to Marty. Has this been presented yet to our Climate Action Committee? Have they seen it? Has there been any feedback about this from the Climate Action Committee as far as what?
Councilor Beelan.
Yes, through the, your worship, it was presented last meeting that we had, so there hasn't been any time for any feedback from anything.
Okay, so will we see something as a recommendation, or will we, because I mean, this feeds right into your wheelhouse as far as opportunity. And of course, we're just getting into budget discussions right now. So, you know, I guess I'll throw it back at you to Jim to say, okay, well, could this fit into our plan?
We're going to be meeting November 6th, so I'll find out more then.
Oh, okay.
And report back to you.
And through the mayor,
Yes.
it is on the agenda.
There you go.
A review of this discussion.
Great.
So we'll get feedback from the council at that
Yeah.
time. Good, thank you.
That's great. Good. All right. Catherine, are you coming to that meeting?
I am not,
Oh,
but I
okay.
have been, I did do the presentation that you have this evening. I did that to the advisory committee a couple of weeks ago. I think it was on
Great.
October the 23rd.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much. All right, Mr. Beelan, did you have something you want to add there?
Yeah, I have a couple questions. Thank you, your worship. I know I asked this when you presented it to the Climate Action Committee. You plan on going ahead with the cohort, but you need 8 companies and currently you only have 3. and you've been to 250 places or businesses, that's 3 out of 250. That's a lower batting average than Aaron Judge in the
Mhm.
postseason. So obviously the companies aren't seeing a benefit to this. So I think you need to somehow show the benefits. So I don't know how you can plan to go ahead with the cohort when you only have 8 or 3 and you need 8. So
Well, as I mentioned, since I did that last presentation where I talked about that, and I did say in this presentation, the slide number is still 3, but we do have 5 that are already signing up and going through the process of getting the proposal that they would get from the green economy. So we will have our 8. We are starting in December for sure with our first cohort. I will say that it's a different concept that we're presenting. It's not something that I can just go and sell. I'm selling a widget, and this is, a widget that all businesses need. It's a different mindset that's taking it. So it is taking time. And that isn't this kind of a model is not something that everybody is married to right away. So that's why we're running the pilot, and why we're only doing 2 cohorts of 8 to 10 businesses per. So
Okay.
I do think that it's time. And I think the other part of this is, as you know, is that we're a charity as well, and we have limited resources. And that's why I'm here asking for some funding, because it's a large project. It's probably the largest that the Collingwood Climate Action Team has run. And so we've had to scale up with resources and money to do it, because it wasn't part of our 2024 budget to do this.
okay, thank you. Mike?
I just want to also say that I think the businesses that are signing up are being ambassadors for us as well. So Georgian Bay Spirit Co. is one of the ones that has signed up, and they've already been down this journey. So it was easy for them to say they wanted to come to it. They could have, and they were already with another company that provides this kind of service. Why they switched to this one is because they want to work in the local community to help others do what they've been doing. And they've already reduced their carbon emissions by almost 15% in 1 year. So there is value in doing it, and it does do the things that you've seen in the presentation tonight. It's hard work. Think of it as business development. You've got to go out and knock on doors.
So after the first cohort, some of the companies may endorse it or whatever. It might be easier to get more on
Yes.
stream. My second question is
Yes.
there a budget available? You're asking for money, but I think we'd like to see where the money goes.
So the budget would be basically split into 2 main pieces. One will be for to host an event. And so there'll be expenses with that in terms of, a space to do it. What we will provide in terms of refreshments and all of that sort of thing. There'll be a formal presentation, there'll be a mix and mingle, and we may do them multiple times. So there'll be one that we'll do probably very close to the end of the year if we can. And then there'll be others that we'll do in the new year. And then it's also going out and meeting with businesses one-on-one and walking them through the material. And that would be, and having a conversation with what they see, and they're answering their questions. And that would be only for businesses that we're approaching here in Clearview. And that's where we're going to partner and work with the Clearview Sustainability Network, and probably your ECDEV person, Kelly, or Briar Kelly, to help us identify businesses that could be good candidates. And that makes our job easier than doing cold calls. So
So you're saying there is a budget that will be presented to us, or there isn't?
The $3,500 is what I'm asking for. That would be the budget for us to do some of the work here in Clearview. It's not all of it. I mean, I have to pay people to do this work. It's not a volunteer job.
So that might be nice to see in a budget, how much these people get paid and stuff. That's all I'm saying. Is there a budget that we can actually look at?
Expense.
Yeah,
Forecasting of
sure,
expenses.
absolutely.
All right, thank you so much. Councillor Deneen?
Thank you, Your Worship. We have, I'm going to look to the clerk's office to correct me if I'm wrong, but we have our grants and sponsorships twice a year intakes. And we did that so that we wouldn't have to look at different ones through the year. And our next intake is in February 2025, and it's open to any nonprofit charitable organization. And I don't know if we can even look at something right at this point, for you, because that's the way we set things up and we passed bylaws for that. We'd encourage you to come back February 2025 with an ask. And our last intake was in September. And yeah, and we are not allowed to have wages paid for those asks. You cannot use the grants to pay wages. But we expect a budget and we expect an ask and what they're going to use the funds for. And I don't know if there's anything more, like if this falls into that category.
Madam Clerk?
Thank you, Worship, through you to Councillor Deneen. Without looking at a specific application, just generally looking at our policy, it would appear that your group would be beneficial to apply, and any specifics we could look at. But to Councillor Beelan's point, part of that is having an actual budget of what your initiatives are and where those funding and monies would go to. Councillor Deneen is correct. That funding isn't to go towards wages for people in your initiative. It's more to go towards the actual program of the initiative. So.
Did you catch the code there? The code is apply for a program that you're going to do.
Right, which this is.
Thank you.
So can I just answer your question a little bit? So I will say that, yes, I know, because that's the same process that Collingwood has, is that they do have a grant program. They only do one intake in February. And they've just changed their process because they used to have a more open process for council requests. And then they had their PRC, which is their Parks, Recreation and Cultural grant program. That was 1,500 or 5,000 you could apply for. Yes, this is an ask outside of that, because at the time that we had submitted, for example, to Collingwood, this was not on our radar as a project by any stretch of the imagination. It accelerated much faster. I've been on the working team for this for almost 4 years. And I was warning our board that it was coming, but I didn't expect it to be happening in 24. And we just happened to be able to accelerate it. So this is unanticipated expenses. And certainly I respect the process. I will say that Collingwood has been generous enough to recognize that this was important enough to work a little bit around that process. And I hope that this council would maybe consider that as well. Otherwise, and we will still come back to apply in February for 2025 money. We're looking for 24.
Go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, through your worship to Councillor Deneen. I think part of the difference here, and I'm fairly familiar with the community grant type of thing, which is awesome. And I think council is great at supporting lots of initiatives. This is more of an economic development thing for Clearview. You know, it's not so much the public, for the benefit of the public, as for the benefit of Clearview's economic development. So it's more, I feel like, a partnership type of relationship with council. I think it falls outside of that other aspect, because I'm hoping that this is something that everybody embraces, and we have volunteers for sure, some of you here tonight, all of us, but you know that there, as Catherine pointed out, it's a bigger job. Like, and I think to date, in reference to Councillor Beelan's comment about the number of calls, but getting on the phone and phoning people, I know Catherine did this with us months ago, phoning saying this is something you may interest you, and it went right over my head. You know, and it's not until like sitting that, well, it's actually the presentation in front of the Climate Action Advisory Committee that I went, okay, I'm starting to get this and what it can do for us and things like that. And I think that's where some paid wages, because we don't have enough volunteers to pull it off, to get people to go out and sit down with business owners and say, here's how this works, and walk them through it, instead of just over the phone. So that's, I think, where the need is to initiate it.
All right. Thank you very much, Jim and Catherine. Any other members of council? Okay, nothing further. I'll just wrap up here. Catherine, Jim, listen, I'm really glad you're speaking to the advisory committee. That'll be very helpful, and I'm looking forward to that. I may make a note. Maybe I'll drop in on Wednesday night As you know, it's my pleasure to be a member of every committee. So I might just sneak in and drop in to see you. And the other thing I want to mention, Catherine, thank you so much for mentioning Briar Kelly. I hope you've had a chance to meet her and talk with her. Our new economic development officer, as well as a community development officer. She's going to be very, very busy once she gets sort of her bearings going. I know under the guidance of our CAO, she's already done a lot of things in our community already. She's learning quite a bit and engaging with important partners that we have across our whole township. So I'll be very supportive of that as the mayor, and it's part of the responsibility of the mayor to watch out for economic development. So I'm very interested to hear what this program could do. And so we'll look forward to seeing it. Council will be entering the budget process beginning very soon. Actually, I know our treasurer's online, but I don't need to ask her something. But I do know that we will be going right into budget work coming very quickly this month. So certainly we'll have opportunities for the public to bring forward their recommendations. So, perhaps that's something that I can ask you, Jim, to reach out to other like-minded businesses who would like to make a presentation to council about the budget. This might be something that you could bring forward at that point as well. And perhaps the committee, the advisory committee, can come up with something too as a recommendation to this committee. I know that we've already put a task list together basically for the committee. You've got a lot of things on in the plate. And I know that our stormwater systems is still a pressing issue to me. I'd like to hear some results on that and some ideas. Anyway, we'll talk more about that another time, Jim. But glad to have you here. If there's anything further you want to add, or we just want to wrap up then? You're all good?
It's good. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for coming to, thank you for coming to Clearview Township here tonight, Catherine. Nice to see you all. All right, council, we're going to move on from our presentations, and item number 6, guess what? Public meeting. There are no public meetings tonight scheduled. So item number 7 is our approval of the council meeting minutes. And the recommendation is, be it resolved that council of the township Clearview hereby approve the minutes of the October 21st, 2024 council meeting as presented. Mr. Walker, thank you. Mr. Beelan, thank you. Any questions about the minutes? Seeing none, I'll call the motion. All in favor? And the motion carries unanimous. Thank you. And correspondence for information items. There are several. First of all, there are no closed session report items because there was no closed session tonight. But I do want to mention we did receive several pieces of information from the county. So I'll read off a couple. County invests in regional hospice and palliative care services. An advisory from the County of Simcoe hosting Manufacturers Forum on November the 5th. And Basil Clark acclaimed as warden for a second term, along with, of course, our neighboring mayor in Springwater Township, Jenny Coughlin, is our deputy warden for the remaining term. There's a release here about council aims to build up local support systems for mental health and addictions in the region. And a release from the Simcoe County battery collection notice. The battery collection runs from November the 4th through the 7th. I think people may have those little bags that they were mailed out. The advice is you can also just use a clear bag of anything so they can clearly see. Just get those little batteries out there. It's a very helpful thing to do to help save our environment. Enbridge Gas is applied to increase the natural gas distribution rates. Oh, surprise, surprise. It's nice because they get to notify us that they're actually doing that. Anyway, is there any questions for any of these items? Did you have anything you want to add to anybody? No? There's a bunch of very good reports and releases with good information there. So we do have some county report. Do you have something you want to add for county report, Paul?
I will always talk about county.
I appreciate that.
And as mentioned already, we have elected Basil and Jen, and we're very appreciative of their work as the warden and deputy warden. We're right into our budgets right now, and it's a very challenging time. There's a couple of things. We were always looking at the paramedics, for example, and offload times. For one example, this year, I announced last year, we started a pilot project to reduce the offload times for our paramedics waiting to get into the hospitals. And we tried a test project whereby we hired some nurses to receive the patients as they come in with the ambulance. And they've got the results have been really, really significant. So they've now turned this into a permanent project. So you will see at our 5 hospitals within Simcoe County, they will all have offload nurses during the daily, Monday to Friday, where the heaviest traffic areas are, sort of thing. So that's something that's in the budgets, or they're recommending. We're doing a full analysis of long-term cares with the cost, and it always amazes me what our long-term care can do with a budget or minimal budget, as far as $22 a day to feed a person. It's just phenomenal what they can do, sort of thing. We're also very heavy right now into the daycare situation. And a lot of people are well aware that the government has said if the daycares are not signed into the federal system, there's a lot of daycares that will be losing their funding. So I won't say where some people, the horses are already out of the barn, but it's going to be challenging, but we're well aware of the daycare. We're also talking about the waste calendars that we put out every year. They're going to be cut back this year, it sounds like, in terms of size and availability. A couple interesting things. We are looking at the municipal insurance pool. So our within our own budgets and stuff like that, they're going to be expanding the insurance so that every community within Simcoe County will have access to it. And I believe the figure, Doug, you can correct me, is 22% or something
There's something near there.
they
Yeah.
can save us. So we're looking at cost savings if we decide to participate.
I think we'll have to take a close look at that
Yep.
here and see what our provider can provide versus what we can enter and what areas we can use.
Exactly.
Because it can be divided out. So we'll take a
Something.
close look at it.
The other thing, a big thing was, and they'll be talking to all our municipalities about the IT firewall protection. Most municipalities, or a lot of municipalities, have been affected one way or another. I know Glenna does a great job at protecting us, but they're looking at IT personnel and hiring new technology and everything else. So we'll wait and see what happens, but it's all items we're discussing within our budget process. So just a couple of things. There's so much going on. We spent 6 hours the other day haggling over budgets, and it's challenging.
The other thing is because the municipalities across Simcoe County are all growing, there is a greater demand for paramedic services, just to have the coverage by the 1,000 per 1,000 people. And as a result, they will be hiring some more paramedics and adding some more paramedic units. And the lead time to order, just like a fire truck, it takes more than 12 months just to get a darn ambulance. It's really frustrating.
I think they've rewritten some of the contracts now up to 2 years to get ambulances.
Yeah, yeah. And so as a result, one of the pieces that we've added was that the maintenance schedule is going to be taking a look at opportunities to take a unit out of service and totally have it refurbed so that they can stretch its length another couple of years. But they're doing everything they can when it comes to paramedic services. It's an essential service. And so
The other thing too, I bring to people's attention, during this past year, the Simcoe Regional Airport, which was 90% owned by the County of Simcoe and 10% owned by the City of Barrie, is now 100% owned by the County of Simcoe. And so it's going to give us an opportunity, or give the county an opportunity for development now. And I can tell you, there's a lot of exciting things, with the bulge, the growth in Toronto, it's pushing up north here. So anyways, it's going to be very interesting. It's not going to be a standstill type airport. It's going to be a dynamic airport sort of thing. So like everything that we work on, we're touching with the budget. It's getting a thorough look at.
thank you very much for that review. Any quick questions from our members? Seeing none at this time. Thank you, folks. All right, Paul, I appreciate your input there. We'll get back to you in a moment. At this time, we're going to go to council reports and community announcements. And my arrow is pointing towards Councillor Broderick at this hour. So next week, it'll be at Councillor Walker. So Mr. Broderick, you're up first.
Thank you, Your Worship. We'll start with October 22nd. Attended the Creemore BIA's AGM. The members approved their proposed budget for next year. On Wednesday, October 23rd, attended the Songwriters That Rock Small Halls event in Ottawa. What a great event that was. On the 24th, partook in the Priority Council meeting via Zoom. The 25th, attended the Clearview Theatre production of Matilda. That was very well done. The 26th, attended Central Ontario ATV Club's Night Ride. On the 28th, attended the Clearview Council's Priority Council meeting. On the 29th, the Creemore BIA regular meeting. On the 30th, a site visit on the 26-27 side road, facilitated by Councillor Deneen. And on the 30th, attended the special council meeting, planning public meeting. That brings me up to date.
Excellent. Did you dress up for Halloween? You got to the
Not-
30th. I was waiting for the 31st, what you were going to say.
No, I took the night off,
Oh, good.
actually.
Okay. Councillor MacArthur, how you doing?
Thank you, your worship. I really don't have much to report other than like to acknowledge Creemore native Jenny Coughlin as being acclaimed deputy warden again. So proud of our hometown girl. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor, do you have anything you want to add, or before I go to this side of the table? You go now.
We're
Okay.
always going places and doing things, but I don't like to talk too much about all our meetings. But anyways, the two things I wanted to talk about, especially in light of Remembrance Day coming up. The Collingwood Museum has a special program on right now until December 31st. It's called From Vimy to Juno, and it's a rolling presentation. So I love that stuff, and I
Yeah.
really appreciate our history and remember our history. So I just let people know about that. And tomorrow night, we do have a bit of an opportunity to go to the Sunnydale Hall for a celebration for our small hall volunteers. So I'm sure a few of us will be there for that one.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you for mentioning that, for sure. Councillor Deneen, you're up.
Thank you, your worship. I too was at the Songwriters That Rock at the Small Halls event. Last minute replacement that as a volunteer that I was all they had. It was great. And I just wanted to mention that I'd really appreciated you guys all coming out to the 26-27 side road for that meeting. And I think it was a good meeting. And we got a lot out in the open for the residents there. Our little small hall, other than the Songwriters That Rock, we had the Meraki Market this weekend and it was packed. And Station 5 had their pumpkin smash yesterday, along with the Scouts, Cubs and Beavers. And I understand it was a great success. I didn't make it out. We had other engagements that we had to go to. And I want to thank the mayor and Tracy for coming out to Rick and Kath's 50th anniversary. He's a retiree from Clearview, and it was very much appreciated. Thanks. That's it for
Thank
me.
you. That was Station 6. You said 5. I know Sasha's writing it down at 6, Station 6. Famous annual pumpkin smash. It's a great time. Go ahead, Marty.
Thank you, your worship. October 23rd, the Climate Action Committee met, and there's a motion on tonight's agenda as a result of that meeting. We also will be meeting November 6th, and there's an item on the agenda about the presentation tonight. October 24th and the 28th, I attended the priority meetings. And also on October 28th, I attended the first ever Huronia West Police Services Board meeting. A lot of administration stuff was taken care of. All the members pledged their oaths, and we selected a chair and vice chair. And our mayor is the vice chair of that committee. And October 30th, I attended the regular planning meeting. And I would like to say I'm looking forward to November 11th. I'll be in New Lowell for their Remembrance Day service. It's always a good one. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. And Mr. Walker.
Thank you, Your Worship. Previous committees have been already mentioned, 24th, 28th, priority council meetings, 30th is planning. And I have coming up the accessibility next week and the library board the following week. So those are the two busy committees that will be moving forward. That's it.
All right, thank you very much. I'll just take a minute and mention a couple of events, and then I'd like to go to the CAO to talk about the results of the priority meetings so that the public are aware of that. But in the meantime, I will mention, I had the honor to not only represent all of you and all of Clearview, but just the pleasure to shake the hand of a veteran of the Second World War, a great citizen here in Stayner. He's 101 years old, Mr. Alistair McDonald. People call him Mac. I got to see him on Saturday at the Legion. Boy, is he ever looking good, as sharp as a tack. He talks, looks like he's, no problem at all. Like, life is good to this gentleman. And it was just a pleasure to be there with his family, members from the Legion, the 457 branch, as well as the 441 branch of the Air Force Association. They were there. It was just great. 101 years, and it was a nice celebration, and just a pleasure to see him and to talk to him. And so that was a great little event. Additionally, the Royal Canadian Legion Branch 456 President Jim Seeley presented Alistair McDonald with his 75-year member pin. Now just consider that. He's 75 years as a member of the Legion in Stayner. Like, nobody does that. It's just fantastic. And what a great fellow. So it was a really great thing to be there. And as Councillor Deneen mentioned, later on, Tracy and I were able to attend Rick and Kathy McDuffie's 50th wedding anniversary. And what a great family gathering that was. It seems like all of Ottawa was there and beyond. It was a great event. And Rick and Kathy were, I guess they got a little emotional, when they started having all their kids around them and recognizing that, they've been married 50 years, and it's a significant thing. So they're great neighbors, really great people. Rick is a very valued employee to us here at Clearview Township for all the years that he served us. He was a grader operator and did lots of other things in the Public Works Department. Just a great fellow. So it was a really great event for sure. Those are the two things I do want to mention, and I would like to ask the CAO just a couple of questions for clarification. We did meet as a council. Both first meeting was an in-camera meeting to discuss a negotiation. And then the second meeting was an open session meeting where we presented agreements to move us forward with our water application. So I'd just like the CAO, as he was given direction by council to act, if you could just review what has happened and where we are now. John?
Thank you, Worship. So through you to the rest of council and to public, we submitted an application for a project valued at $70 million. We're seeking 35 million from the province. So as a part of our process leading up to this, we had to be able to demonstrate that we can pay for the project. So it required us to have developer agreements with significant developers in our community who would agree to basically guarantee that they would purchase so many units. And a unit is determined to be a single detached equivalency for a single family home, so to speak. And it can vary depending on what type of development you have. So if you were building a townhouse, it might be 0.6 of an SDE, a single detached equivalent. So in this instance, each developer that came to the table, 3 major developers, agreed to contribute 1,058 single detached equivalencies each, which valued their contribution towards the project at roughly $31 million. The municipality has also purchased with the intent of recovering. When you purchase DCs, you get it you recover those when a home's built and sold. So the municipality has purchased 501. And that basically equates to 35 million or roughly $35 million to match the 50% request of what we're asking for an additional 35 million from the province. So the agreements came together. We were working on the final pieces. Really, we were working on two clauses of the agreement when we got the resolution from council to permit me to finalize the agreement with consultation with our solicitor and staff to make sure it's in line with what we have to do. We were able to do that. We finalized that Thursday afternoon, late Thursday afternoon. Proceeded to get the agreement signed on Friday, and Friday at noon, the deadline was Friday. Friday at noon, Mayor Measures came in to sign the documents with our clerk, and we were able to submit the application on time. So it was quite a process getting it ready. But ultimately, it's a $70 million project and we're seeking 35 million.
Thank you very much, Mr. CAO. And now the waiting. So we wait to see how our application does with the province of Ontario. So thank you for all your work. Thank you to our solicitor. And I must say thank you to the development community for recognizing their investment in our community is very important if they wish to be successful and we wish to be successful as a community. And so this is a new partnership, let's say, that's being forged in how we do water servicing in our community. So we're very grateful to get there. Now, again, we'll just wait to see what happens at the province. And believe me, as soon as we know, this council will know. Thank you very much, John, for all your work on this. Members of council, there's no questions? All right, let's move on in our agenda, everyone. Let's move on to section number 10, which is our department reports and bylaws. First item is going to be a Parks and Recreation. Mr. Vachon is here with us. Hello, Terry. And so I will read the recommendation. Be it resolved that Council of the Township of Clearview hereby receive report PCR 018-2024 car charging stations for New Lowell and Creemore, dated November the 4th, 2024. Item 1, that council approve installing one car charging station at the New Lowell Public Works Fire Hall building and a second car charging station at the Creemore Medical Center. And item 2, that council approved using the tax stabilization reserve to fund the installation of the charging stations. Can I get a mover and seconder on this motion? Mr. Broderick and the Deputy Mayor, thank you so much. Hello, Terry, would you give us just a quick outline as to any highlights from your report that you'd like to bring forward?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. So I'm hoping the report is very self-explanatory. We're hoping to be able to install the last 2 car charging stations from the batch of the original 10 that we purchased earlier this year. So 8 have been installed in the designated areas. The department is recommending to council 2 locations that are more feasible at this time. This does not negate the thought of installing car charging stations at other locations across Clearview, and more specifically at some of our small halls, being Duntroon, Ottawa, and Evening. But our research has shown that at this point is that there is a cost to install them at those other locations. So the proposal put forward is to actually install the car charging stations right on the building versus on a cement pad with a hydro panel. That's where the significant costs are. So the 2 locations that are being recommended, one is part of the new Public Works Fire Hall in New Lowell. New Lowell was an area that was designated. The recreation location was kind of earmarked, but that was before the building got built. So you'll see in my report, there's a picture of a proposed location that would fit nicely. And the other location, also part of a new development, is the parking area at the Creemore Medical Center. There's been some significant investments made by council and the Public Works to redo that whole parking lot. It's fully paved with proper parking designations, and there's a location there as well that could be suitable for a car charging station right on the building. So tapping into the building's hydro, and a parking space right next to the building there. So those are the 2 locations that the department is recommending to council to install the last 2 car chargers. We are part of our original rebate for this project. We've received 90% of the funding back. The funding agency is holding back 10% until the remaining car chargers are installed. So we're hoping to be able to finalize that rebate program as well. So with that, Your Worship, I'm available for any questions that council may have.
All right, thank you very much for your work on this, Mr. Vachon. And is there any questions? Mr. Walker first, and then the Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Worship. Thanks, Terry, for the breakdown of the different locations. It certainly helped to for us to understand the costs involved. I guess my one question is, you're going to go on the buildings. You might want to look at the Creemore Medical Center with that downspout right there and that spot right where your electricity is. It might not be a good fit with plugging your car in with the water from the eaves trough coming down at that point in that spot. That's all.
I'm sure you'll consider that, Terry.
Yes, Your Worship. If I may, through you to Councillor Walker. So just to make sure, so the location and perhaps the picture in my report doesn't show it, make it justice, but the car charging station will actually be installed in between both locations. If you recall, the car chargers have two outlets.
Yeah.
So it'll actually be in between those two car parking areas. And we did get an electrician to go on site to give us the proposal for the cost, and has deemed that location is deemed safe from an electrical standards authority perspective.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And the Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Your Worship. Terry, this is sort of throwing a ball similar to Mr. Walker there. We're hearing all these stories now about fires with car charging. We saw what happened in the Florida with the salt water, what it did. We see it one the other day in Toronto again, that it burnt up. Do we have to do anything to protect our buildings so that we're not susceptible to fire? Has our fire department looked at any of this, or IESO or somebody like that? Thank you.
Terry?
Thank you, Your Worship. That's a very good question. No, I don't think that research has been completed. We've been working with the electricians to deem the building safe. We'll definitely look into if extra security measures, should be put in place to protect the building. But from what we heard from the electricians, the buildings that have been identified are safe at this point, and the car chargers themselves are fairly new and should be deemed safe as well. But we can do further research for sure.
Sure, I think it's important. I'd rather spend a bit more money to make them, if we had to have them freestanding. I mean, we're dealing with snow in this climate. We're dealing with all different situations. But I think it's really important that I don't want to see a building burnt down without our due diligence to make sure it doesn't happen. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Mr. MacArthur, go ahead.
Yeah, through Your Worship to Terry. Just wondering if we have any kind of numbers on the stations that started working this summer, or I'm pretty sure they're up and running. Whether we got any figures on usage?
Yes, through Your Worship to Councillor MacArthur. Yes, absolutely. We do receive a monthly report. So the Treasurer's Office and my office, we receive a report from Hypercharge. That's the company that does it. I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, unfortunately. I could definitely provide those. But they are being used. It's being used more in the Creemore area from what I gathered than any other area in Clearview at this point. But I don't have the exact numbers in front of me. But we do have a report. I could definitely share those with council.
Okay. Yeah, if you could share that, we'd be interested. I'd personally be interested to see them for sure. All right. Any other questions? All right. That's great. Thank you very much, Terry, for your work on this. And thank you for a lot of clarification and some of your answers. Yes, go ahead.
I apologize, Your Worship. I forgot to mention at the beginning as well that, as you know, we're applying for other funding for other halls. So, at the car charging stations, we're not part of those original, but we can definitely look and make it part of those applications moving forward to cover the costs of these car charging stations at other facilities. Thank you, Your Worship.
Okay. Yeah, for sure. That's the beauty of these things. They can be added, as long as we think about them ahead of time. Much like the actual build in New Lowell, the whole structure had a whole parking plan that all got adjusted as soon as we were able to remove the old fire hall. It opened up a whole lot of space, which created a better flow of vehicles around the building. So it makes it better. All right, members of council, there's nothing further. I'm prepared to call the motion. All those in favor? And that carries unanimous. Thank you very much. All right. And we're going to move on to Building and Planning Department. We've got the Committee of Adjustment report for October. Be it resolved that Council of the Township of Clearview hereby receive report PB 031-2024. The Committee of Adjustment October 2024 report dated November 4, 2024 for information. And Deneen, thank you. And Walker, thank you. Just looking your way. All good. Any questions from members? Seeing none, I'll call the motion. All in favor? And that carries unanimous. Thank you. All right, we're going to go to the Public Works Department and we have the wastewater systems rate report. The recommendation says, be it resolved that Council of the Township of Clearview hereby receive report PW 025-2024. It's the water and wastewater systems rate report dated November 4, 2024. And item 1, that council directs staff to finalize the 2025 to 2030 water wastewater rates bylaw for approval. Okay, Mr. Broderick, thank you. And Deneen, thank you. All right, Dan, are you speaking to this or you got your fine team there still beside you? You're keeping them handy. They're right there, ready to go.
They're very ready to go. Thank you, Your Worship. This is just a culmination of
Yes.
Ken's report, the next two reports that you see. One is on the rate study and the financial plan, the requirements for council to adopt the financial plan. But the rate study bylaw will come with I think in December is when Kelly's proposing to do that as an annual update that we normally would do. So you'll see that coming shortly in the updated rate bylaw, fee bylaw.
Okay. Thank you. Is there any questions from the members to any of the staff? Seeing none, thank you very much. Council, you have a resolution with a mover and seconder. I am prepared to call the motion. All those in favor? That carries unanimous. Thank you. All right. Next item in Public Works is the water financial plan. As was just mentioned by Dan. Okay, be it resolved that Council of the Township of Clearview hereby receive report PW 026-2024, the 7-year water financial plan dated November 4, 2024 for information. And item 1, the council confirm that the drinking water system is financially viable and approve the 7-year water financial plan for 2024 to 2030 for submission to the province, with the understanding that the plan may be updated by council from time to time. And item 2, that a copy of the financial plan with technical refinements as detailed to be appropriate by the treasurer be given to the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing. Motion moved by Deneen and Walker this time. Thank you. Better be quicker, Marty. All right, Dan, anything further? All right. Just a quick question. Should this be the 2025 to 2030? The previous motion was also 2025 to 2030. So, yes. Hi, Steph.
Hi, good evening. So your worship, this financial plan is required to cover a 6-year period.
Okay.
The way we did it, we structured it, we just started it with 2024 with the current year because we're still in it. And we will be looking to having this, as part of our licensing renewal requirement. It needs to cover the 5-year period plus the period in which the following year is. So for our renewal is occurring in 2025. So the financial plan has to cover the period from 2025, 26, 27, 28, 29, and 2030, which would be at the next renewal period. So that's just a requirement from the province. But yeah, so it was just the wording on it when we did up the financial plan to start this year because our application.
Got you.
Then that's it.
Okay, I just wanted to be clear. I did hear Ken talk about it being a 5-year plan. So I
Yeah,
want to make
so,
sure. Okay.
and then to the rate study, we're looking at the 5 years of the rates bylaws where we will be looking at, but like I said, the financial plan has to
All
cover the
right.
6-year.
Well, water isn't cheap. All right, thank you so much, guys. Members of council, if no questions, I'm prepared to call the motion. All those in favor? That also carries unanimous. Thank you very much. Okay. All right, we have another report though, and that is the winter sand tender. And we're going to award this All right, be it resolved that Council of the Township of Clearview hereby receive report PW 027 2024, the Winter Sand Tender Award, and is dated November 4, 2024. Item 1, award the tender for winter sand supply to G Priest Services, Inc. in the amount of $325,214, HST included. Okay, mover and seconder. Mr. Beelan, thank you. Mr. MacArthur, thank you. Thank you. Here we are. Any questions, or Dan, you got any comments, or Todd? Todd, you worked on this, didn't you? Yeah. Todd, say hello.
Hello, your worship.
Nice to see you.
Good to be here. But yeah, no, not a lot to say. It's pretty self-explanatory. It's
Yes.
just award of the
Okay.
tender for sand.
All right, thank you very much. Members of council, any yes, you have a question for Marty.
Thank you, worship. Todd, I'm just wondering, how many truckloads is that? Approximately.
Big trucks or little trucks?
Well, how many trucks do they use? And I'm just wondering how many trips it is, because the further it is, the more air gets polluted or whatever. It's nice to have it local, but I mean, I know Gary Priest is in Anton Mills, I think, right? So he's fairly close. Just wondering approximately how many trips that is with whatever trucks they use. They probably have those big ones with the bottoms, the live bottoms or whatever too, or?
Yeah, that's great. Through your worship to Councillor Beelan, yeah, most of them will use the trailers, the live bottoms and dump. It all depends where it's coming from too. Like the local company may not be getting it local, or they may have to travel a ways too. And I honestly don't know where the other bidders were coming from with it. We didn't get into that far, but it's a total of 20,000 tons. So
So now, okay, 20,000.
20,000. Yeah, that's what this year's
Okay.
tender was out for. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
That's it. Keep the staff on their toes over there. Marty, good job. All right. Members of council, you got any other questions? Have any other questions? No, seeing none. Council, you have a motion in front of you. I'm prepared to call the motion. All those in favor? That also carries unanimous. Thank you. All right. Moving on in our agenda, council. We have, oh yes, item 12, the notice of motion and new business. So there is a notice of motion. I will not read it at this time because it's not going to be debated. I want to acknowledge Councillor Beelan for bringing this forward and the Climate Action Advisory Committee. And so this will be discussed. It's in regards to FCM and the Clean Air Partnership on November the 18th. So thank you for bringing that forward. We're going to move way down in our agenda now to item number 13, which is our confirmatory bylaw recommendation. Be it resolved that bylaw number 2479, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the November 4th, 2024 council meeting, be presented and read a first, second, and third time, finally passed on the 4th day of November 2024. Moved by Deputy Mayor, seconded by Mr. Broderick. Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, I'll call the bylaw. All in favor? Bylaw carries. Thank you. And I believe that will be an adjournment coming up here. It is. Item number 14 is the adjournment. The time is what, 7:28? Is that what we're calling it? Or is that fully accurate? Sarah, 7:28. How about that? Just so you know, Sasha reset the clock today, so excellent. Be it resolved, the council meeting will be adjourned at 7:28. That'll be Deneen and Walker. Thank you, Deneen and Walker. All those in favor? That carries unanimous. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for joining us here today. Please find a Legion or a cenotaph ceremony on Monday, next Monday, to honor Remembrance Day. Thank you.